This is Talking My Walking. I am Rodrigo Ribeiro, just another voice in the wilderness. Today I want to talk about individualism versus collectivism and human flourishment. Um, we live in we have been living in this mode for a long time, okay? Good versus evil, this versus that, nature versus culture, blah blah blah. Okay, this is one important problem that uh, our cultures, I would say, this is predominant in the Western culture, but is not is really a feature of all cultures that perceive civilization as an evolution, as a separation, as a process by which we leave behind our savage inheritance to become civilized. So this is kind of, there is this always this separation. That's why it's culture versus nature, not culture in the web of nature. And then there is individualism and collectivism, individualism versus collectivism. For many of us, maybe even most of us, individualism, the ideology of individualism or the cult of individualism, is the is what is the epitome of the respect for the individual, as if collectivism is immediately the suppression of the individual. Okay, many of us don't understand that the type of individualism, the cult of the individualism that we have today, is and suppresses individual rights. It's about an idea of individualism that that is superficial, that is shaped, designed, I mean, to shape us, to shape our behavior and our thoughts and our feelings, to adapt to a specific societal paradigm. Okay, it's not individual in the type of individualism. You need to understand this. The type, I mean, many of us do understand it, but as I always emphasize this point: understanding something intellectually is never enough. It doesn't change anything, even doesn't change ours. Of course, we need to understand intellectually, which means that we need to have a rational understanding, the understanding of the ideas, the understanding of the concepts, and the understanding of the mechanisms and the instruments. So we need to have a systemic understanding. And that systemic understanding, in order to be effective, it needs to go through this process of conscious transformation, that we really analyze it through a self-analytical process that understands how it changes us, how things, our ideas, our narratives, how everything is that we are exposed to can do change ourselves, do have an effect, does condition our perception, does interfere in the building, in the shaping of our psycho sociocultural identity at the subconscious level. This everything of this is not as nothing to it. It influences how we it influences how we uh, it influences everything, but at the same time it doesn't really uh, we don't really see it. I mean, we don't really since we don't analyze it, we take it as natural, as part of the environment, because it is part of the environment. Okay, it is part of the environment where I live, because that's why I say when we are even here, this is not a natural environment, by the way. This is just these trees, that is most of these trees that are around me, they were not here. They are how they call it, invasive species, so they are not endogenous, and all of this is not, there is nothing natural about this. That's exactly the point. I can come here if I if, and also how I perceive it is from my cultural environment, my scientific, based on my scientific knowledge, on my experience and everything else. So we always keep that 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 experience with us as part of our subconscious identity. What do I mean by identity? Identity is not something that identity is a systemic thing. It's a systemic, complex reality. It's not a thing. It's not my soul. It's not myself. It's dynamic. It's alive. It's organic. It's psychological. It's psycho-cognitive affective. So it's a process, but it's also but it has pillars. It has foundations. It has dominant narratives. So this has nothing to do, I mean, of course it has to do what I was talking about. The point is, we think collectivism threatens our individuality. And we believe that freedom, freedom of movement, freedom of choice, freedom of speech, and so on and so forth, are individual freedoms. And to me, it's okay with that. I need my freedoms, my personal freedoms, my individual freedoms. I want my freedom of movement. I want freedom of choice, freedom of decision, freedom of speech. But the point in our individualistic societies, the framework of our individualistic societies, is not about respect for your individuality. Our individuality is not that important. They don't want to listen to us, to what we feel about things. How do you feel about your work, your job? What do you feel about certain things? I mean, there are many things that are, we don't, they are ostracized. They become taboos. We don't talk about it. We don't think about it, because that's the problem. We don't talk about it, but we also don't think about it. But we still feel the negative consequences of those, because it's we feel shame and guilt. Okay, we can feel shame and guilt, and because we are social beings, all right. That's and conscious beings. This all these things always goes together. We feel shame and guilt because we are conscious beings. What is a conscious being? A being that is able to reflect, to analyze their its own behaviors, its own thinking processes, its feelings. It's able to have a self-analysis. And at the same time is a social being. So it cannot be this. We cannot separate any analysis. You cannot have an analysis of an individual without having an analysis of the environment, of the society. Because if we keep doing this, like if that the problem is always with us, with the individual, we might be maladapted. We cannot. If you cannot stand a job, oh, that's a problem with you. Nothing is good enough for you. It's something wrong with you. If you cannot stand something such as animal cruelty, or if you don't stand some, if you are more sensitive to certain things, you are hypersensitive. You don't understand the reality. You don't see that things don't work like that. It's always a problem with the individual when the individual, for some reason, reacts negatively in what the system imposes, what the societal system imposes on us. So therefore, we are not respected individually. Within the system, this individualistic system is not about respecting the individual, not the feelings. It's about shaming and making people feel guilty, not perfect enough, not wise enough, not responsible enough, not this enough, not that enough. Which is not a problem to have a critic of our human failures or individual failures. That's not a problem, for as long as we also contextualize this, to have social context, historical context, socioeconomic, sociopolitical, cultural context. Because again, we cannot and we should not allow any form of pseudoscientific knowledge or pseudoscience discipline to tell you that something is wrong with your brain, that is a chemical imbalance, while dismissing the role of society, the role of the environment, which is not a natural environment. It's a manufactured environment. And who designed it? What is the purpose? Cui bono? So when we think about individualism versus collectivism, and we think that collectivism is bad because collectivism is the suppression of the individual. and I'm with you. I don't want collectivism in the sense that that I have to suppress my individualism. But there is one thing that we must not get confused, which is the collective well-being. We can call it whatever we want. The collective well-being, the collective of the community, the collective of the nation, and the collective well-being of the humanity is a responsibility, is an individual responsibility. And just as it goes for freedom, there is a difference between feeling entitled and one thing is feeling entitled, which is this individualistic, meritocratic, the mythology of the meritocracy that is imposed on us to justify the inequalities and social injustice and naturalize it and normalize it with the idea that some people are that we have we are entitled to what we deny others only because of merit. And this is the individualistic way of suppressing any analysis that really understands the needs of the individuals, respects the boundaries of the individuals, but also respects because if we do not, if people are, it's so it is very difficult to talk with people because even your friends, because this individualistic mentality that we have today is about judgment. Okay, there is not about sharing in the sense that, okay, I am an individual, I want to be respected, but the first principle of my individualism is that I need to listen to what other is feeling, because it's always about feelings. What is the effects. If we do not understand how deep the psychology of feelings, which means that if you don't understand that most of what ruins our lives at the psychological level and relational level, that in our relation to each other is what we feel, and that we are not allowed to talk about because you are dismissed, because people want to move to another thing, because they don't want to respect your feelings in the sense that it doesn't matter what you feel, because this is a subjective experiences, that as if it has nothing to do with the respect of the individual, of the person, of that human being particularly. We don't want to waste our time because there is professionals to take care of it. If you don't feel well, you feel what is the reason for your depression? What is the reason why you don't want to collaborate with this or that? Why don't you want to be to socialize more, for example? If you don't feel, if you feel that you are wasting your time, that you could be doing something much better than what you are doing, because nobody wants to talk about life, about human experience, about what a human being really is. People want to amuse themselves to death while in being narcissistic and hedonistic, is this kind of the epitome of the human experience, you know, that you never feel satisfied. You cannot, you don't talk about the human nature, and you don't talk about our condition, and what makes us really feel, what is happiness, what is joy, what makes us feel joy, sustained joy, not peaks of happiness, not like and then we explain it. I feel it deplorable when people try it's always about dopamine, it's all about serotonin, it's all about this and this, and I mean, it is so it is explanations that do not explain as anything, but they justify the existing system and the existing individualistic paradigm that doesn't respect the individual. While uh, while talking about collectivism as the suppression of individualism, what can be true to a certain extent, because if we imagine collectivism as something where the individual doesn't matter at all, that is true, and I don't want it by any stretch of the imagination. But what we need to understand that we don't have, we have an individualistic society. It is the pursuit of self-interest and the pursuit of the primacy of private property, the primacy of the maximization of profits, the primacy of wealth accumulation, and this is the individualism that we see, the rights, the objective of life, and we don't care what people feel. We don't even care, as I said before, even in the context of family and friends. They dismiss you. They make you. We have a society that is basically makes people. We are social beings. We need to talk about ourselves. We need to talk about what we feel and why we feel what we feel. This should be a conversation, and we should also talk about the causes, the root causes of our problems, where they do come from. Why do we and we don't. We attack each other, we judge each other, but not with an analysis. And the problem with this, it's because most of the analyses that are made are superficial, are fragmented, are discontextualized, and that's how we live, and this is how we. And the problem is that we are made to believe that we are not perfect enough. It is physically, mentally, intellectually, everything. It's to blame us of flaws that are human flaws, imperfections, that we are not supposed to be perfect beings. We are supposed to to humanize ourselves. That's what a society should be about. To provide, we should have an economy, a reciprocity and sufficiency economy to provide to ourselves that we could be humans. Humans that build meaning through the relations, through healthy and creative relations with each other and with nature. I'm not talking about any form, any path for illumination, and this object is this kind of that you become, and then you need a guru, and then you just engage in cults that suppress that suppress your individual. Just imagine that most cults, religious, political, many different health, all these things that we have these days, tech cults, technofixism, technoscientism, healthism, yogism, and then all these kind of things that tell you that it is for our individual that we can really that we can fulfill ourself or become ourself, the true self, and the liberation of the true self. Okay? And what it is the enslavement of the self. It is the suppression of the self through engaging in a cult of a specific cult, and there is always somebody that is going to profit out of it, because that's the base of this individualistic society is to make you believe that you are in the path for some sort of achieving something, liberating, that you are going to liberate yourself from some sort of suffering, some sort of oppression and repression. But you end up being a slave for a cult that wants to exploit you, to extract wealth from you, to use and abuse you in many forms and ways, while telling you that you are perfecting yourself. You are liberating yourself. This is where we are. There is no advancement, because there is another problem that I see everywhere, even among Marxists and other people that perceive the evolution from as if we come from savagery. This is still this mentality that we come from savagery because we are supposed to perceive the indigenous, we are still supposed to perceive the indigenous peoples as savages and civilization as the objective. But the civilization, we come from problems with civilization that is like imperialistic, that I call the imperialist civilizational paradigm. But we are evolving to other form of civilization, which some people call ecological civilization. But I always say that if it's ecological, it needs to be socio-ecological. It needs to be holistic. Otherwise, it's just part of the technofixism and the technoscientism cult. Which is, again, the same, it's the same lies, the same disconnection, the same lack of context, of understanding human nature, the very condition of the social condition of human nature, the socio-cultural condition of human nature, I should say. and to be the culture that is part of the web of nature, that we understand, we get meaning of our lives as human beings, as embodied minds, as individuals for sure, but that our well-being cannot be disconnected from the well-being, that we see that justice, truth, and trust needs to be built, needs to be part of a web of life, a web of flourishment, of the flourishment of our very humanity, of what we really are, not to invent something that is not true about ourselves. We don't need to be the sons of gods. We need to be the sons of earth. If there is a creator, leave the creator alone. Be a human being. Being a human being that is at the same time an individual because of our very condition of conscious beings. So therefore, the individualism, the individual comes from this, the notion of our needs as individuals comes from our needs, organic needs, to like any other animal, to feed ourselves, to survive, blah, 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 all these things that have to do with the existence of living beings as individuals. But with us is the issue of consciousness, that we understand that we can reflect, and this is where it counts, that we can reflect. But we reflect with what? What are the tools and what are the materials that we use to reflect? Where do they come from? The concepts, the ideas, the rules, the principles, the moral codes, the narratives that try to explain what are we doing here, who are we, where do they come from? But those are the tools that are the building blocks that are used to build our identity, our psycho-socio-cultural identity, but they are social. It's not about just freedom of choice. Freedom of choice, freedom of movement, freedom of speech doesn't exist in a void, in a socio-cultural void. You build it, you understand it, you know what it is, because we live in this environment that is a manufactured environment. That's how we build your individual identity. It doesn't come from any that's and all these ideas, they just it's not only because they divide us, it's because they, instead of helping us to understand and to reconnect not only with nature but with ourselves as human beings, they do destroy our humanity by telling us that they are providing the tools for liberation, for spiritual liberation, for the liberation of the self, from this and that, from this, from this, all these. I mean, honestly, it is mostly rubbish. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have any use, or it doesn't mean, but the things, just because they are old, or they come from the past, or they are recognized by billions, they are not necessarily true. All religions, because there is, it's not because there are no values in the religions, or principles, or things that are not good, But the problem is that people don't understand that they are not those religions, they should be perceived and analyzed as an expression of our ability to be conscious beings and to reflect. They don't give us justice, truth, and trust. This is ours already. It is part of who we are, since we exist at least as Homo sapiens sapiens. The problem with evil, and I keep saying this because this is very important to understand, is that we allow the individuals, the human beings that lack the basic traits that make us human, such as empathy, traits. These are traits. These are not choice. Okay? These are traits of a social species that could never, ever survived without them. Empathy, okay? Empathy, compassion, solidarity, reciprocity, trust. These are fundamentals. It's not religion that gives us to them. They are not given by religion or by any god. Even if there is a creator, I don't care. They are inherent. Any human being can feel them. But nature is not perfect. That's why we have these anomalies, that there are people that maybe that whether it is innately or acquired, they don't have empathy, they don't feel compassion, they don't care about solidarity, they don't care about reciprocity, they don't care about fairness. And if we allow, but that's the problem, they have been always the exception, but they have really powerful edge, okay? They leverage against us because they can use and abuse our trust, that we want to cooperate to build whatever it is, and they can come with stories. They can organize a group. They can organize a political instruments or a political order and the legislative order to authorize them, and then they can build moral narratives to glorify them, and then we follow them. It's a trap. It's a pyramid scheme. And it can go forever. It can go 1,000 years, 10,000 years. It's nothing, because in terms of the wider picture is nothing. It's just a blink of an eye. And people say, it has been always like that for... Yes, it can, and it can continue like that forever if we do not change the perspective, if you don't change the lenses, because we are... And then we tell people that are with some people that says the same. This is really BS. That we created this complex society, and therefore we cannot think about it, and because we are not evolved enough. Always the evolution thing. It is not the creation. This is always the same shit. It is evolution or creation. We cannot understand it in that individualism, collectivism. Always this culture versus nature. How can we understand or build a comprehensive understanding, an holistic understanding of who we are, of our socioculture, or the really understanding of the sociocultural condition of our nature if we do not use other lenses. It's not because we are not able to do it. It's because we are conditioned. That is true, these limits, that we need to understand these limits that we have. But these limits can be surpassed. It's not about erasing anything. It's people, also this kind of thing that we need to, like the narratives, the old narratives. We don't get rid of old narratives. We just make them irrelevant. They are dominant. They dominate. They create. There are some narratives and ideas that are dominant in our subconscious mind, and then by this conscious transformative process, we can make them irrelevant, or at least we can. But in order that we have other kinds of ideas and narratives that will replace them in the dominance to become dominant themselves. We just need to know what kinds of principles, norms, rules, and narratives and concepts about life, about society, about civilization, about our very condition are the ones that should really create a culture of liberation that keeps us not being creating more immunity against being instrumentalized, indoctrinated, instrumentalized, and fanaticized by people, organizations, individuals that lack empathy and compassion. They are narcissistic, psychopaths, sociopaths, opportunists, megalomaniacals, that really are the ones that end up governing us. That's not a law. That's not God. That's not that's not this division of the intervention of there is God in one side and there is devil in another side, and we are just demons. Please, this is real. It's not that people, they are real people, not demons. They just lack this, and that's why we need to understand it and build heaven here with all the limitations, with the suffering that exists, that we cannot, but we can have joy. We can build healthy relations. We can allow us to talk about what we feel about things. We can have individual, fulfilled, meaningful individual lives and build collective well-being, not by suppressing others, not by feeling entitled or feeling superior or whatever it is. We don't need that. It just makes us, in the end, it really strips us. It makes us feeling fear of others, building fences and walls and bunkers we just become these functional beings. It humanizes us to the core, and then we say it's our nature. This is who we are. Is this? I don't know. No, unfortunately, it seems that there are not many people that share that really want to discuss those things with me. I'm just talking. That's why just another voice in the wilderness. That's what it is. Unfortunately, I guess I'm not illuminated. I'm not a prophet. I'm just a human being that has, exactly because feeling that were wrong things wrong with my life, with the jobs, with this and that. I was looking around and said, why? Why is that? How does it? Why and how? Why? Cui bono? What's this? If it's making me miserable, I want to participate in society, but not in this way. Who cares? You have to sell yourself, you know? Once a black guy told me that in my face. Many years in Switzerland. I don't even remember what kind of profession. We were just in the house of a common friend. And okay, in the end I was discussing something that I don't even remember, but the thing kept in my mind. It's at the same point the guy said, you know, we all end up to have to sell ourselves. I mean, it's true in the sense, but he didn't even realize the depth of what he was talking about, the depth of the problem. Okay, we can, and most of us, and also at least so many of us, just engage in cynicism. Yeah, that we can do it. We can be cynics, but what do we gain? We might be even successful, but in the end, there are some sadness. There is a sadness. There is a discomfort that is permanent, a stress, something that we feel that is wrong with us. But again, sometimes it's something wrong with me. I don't feel this is. No, it's nothing wrong with you. If you feel like that, it's because you are still a human being. And it's a start. But please don't look for people that call themselves saviors or gurus or leaders, or they have the knowledge that you don't have. I mean, we all need each other. I say it, I keep repeating it. We all are bits and pieces of other people's experience and knowledge. That is true. That's who we are. And we learn so much. There are some people that have more to, and why they do have, we learn more from them. Because while many of us are doing stupid jobs for a living, so many hours, and then we just even engage into, we allow ourselves to be deceived and distracted by so many, by the omnipresence of weapons of mass deception and mass distraction. That's our lives are lived. We just those people that have the time, that are paid to go deep into their learning, to study, to think. Of course, they know more than you in whatever field it is. You don't take them as authorities. Take them always as somebody just like you. We are all equals as human beings, as beings part of this of the living system of this planet, of the biosphere. That's whenever you feel people that they feel entitled. Okay? People that feel entitled, you always don't have respect for them. Don't respect people that feel entitled. This is nothing to do with respect for the individual. This is somebody that thinks that is the principle that people think they are better than others. They are superior. They are more intelligent. They are more this, more that, whatever it is. These people deserve no respect. Is this something that I say? It is really what I think and feel for these people. They can change. We all can change, and we all can humanize ourselves, and we all can learn that we are part of nature. We are part of the web of nature. That we don't need to be at war with anything. We need to build a culture of true liberation and integration. But I mean, what I see is people. I mean, there is so many. It's the problem of cults, because again, there's people use science to use certain specific knowledge from certain fields of scientific fields to build narratives that in the end are cults. This is not about anything but building cults, and that's what we don't need. That's not. This is exactly. I mean, this is not how we build an individual. Individual sovereignty. I mean, if you care about individual sovereignty, we should care also about the collective well-being. Because if you care about individual sovereignty, intellectual sovereignty, first of all, think that whatever you think you are, is social, is always social, and is always cultural. All right? That's something that this is the notion, the basic notion, that nothing of who we are is an individual process, is an individualized experience. That's for sure, but it's always social and cultural. And we need to understand what it means. Okay? And we need to understand that our sovereignty needs always can never be built on the shoulders of others. Because then we need to justify it. We need to build a narrative that allows us to feel entitled to those privileges. And then we say that we don't want collectivism because it suppresses individualism. That's fine with me. I don't want it either. But I want a political and economic system and societal system and civilization that really is based on the collective well-being. And I don't want to see that is either individualistic or is either collectivist. No. This is exactly the point, that we need to break away from this shit. That there's always this dualistic thing, this division, that this or that. No. We have to have a core of values, principles, and then norms and things that we need. We need but they need to respect. They need to be based on the human features of compassion, empathy, trust, solidarity, cooperation. It's not that it's not going to that we deny competition or we deny this or no. It's not about denying it. It's about understanding that as a social species, we need these features are fundamental building blocks of our species, of who we are. And our experience as individuals, as conscious individuals, we need to have this culture of liberation that allows us to understand this, that we don't want to be free at the expenses of others. You are here. There's another person here next to you. There is a chicken. Do you want to eat the chicken alone because you feel entitled to it and leave the other person without any you don't want to share it with the other person? Is that, do you even can imagine it? If you imagine it like that, just think about who you are, or whatever, what is your, you know, how can we have food and deny it to people, or to animals, or to anything? How can we disrespect everything based on feeling entitled, according to a meritocratic, dogmatic, mythological cult? I mean, this is, you know, it's not who we are. That's the problem. That's the people. That's exactly the point. We can distort. I used to say that a little distortion here, a little omission there, a little of this here, a little, it just changes who we are. It doesn't change us at the core. But we can be transformed through by adopting, and by we can be let me rephrase it. We can be instrumentalized, indoctrinated, instrumentalized, almost to become anything, and then we will be submitted through fear, through obedience, through all this, the use of shame and guilt, the weaponization of all of these, the emotional, cognitive, psychological manipulation, and the weaponization of values. All these. I think this is known, and through language framing, and ideological and cultural framing, and logical fallacies, and all of that. And we can create a mass psychosis that transforms, that as a, this is very, 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 this is really, we need to discuss it and to think about it. That's my point, to reflect. So I'm going to end it here now. Thanks for listening. I will be back soon.